Once upon a time, in a kingdom wrapped in golden deserts and guarded by dark blue mountains, there ruled a king whose name was spoken only in whispers. His name was King Zorvan, and though his crown was heavy with jewels, his heart was heavier with pride and cruelty. He believed fear was stronger than love, and power was greater than mercy. Under his rule, taxes were unbearable, punishments were merciless, and laughter had slowly disappeared from the streets. Yet in the grand palace of white marble and crystal fountains lived someone entirely different, his only daughter, Princess Seraphina. The people secretly called her the fairy princess. Not because she had wings, but because her presence felt like magic. Wherever she walked, flowers seemed brighter. Wherever she smiled, sorrow softened. She had long silver-black hair that shimmered like moonlight and eyes as gentle as the first rain of spring. From a young age, Seraphina could not understand her father's cruelty. When she asked him why people must suffer, he would answer coldly, "A ruler must never be weak." "But kindness is not weakness," she would reply softly. Her words angered him, but he dismissed them as childish dreams. As Seraphina grew older, her kindness grew stronger. She often disguised herself in simple clothes and slipped out of the palace at night. She carried bread hidden beneath her cloak and gold coins tucked in her sleeves. She visited sick children, comforted grieving mothers, and listened to the stories of tired workers. She planted hope like seeds in barren soil. The people adored her quietly. They prayed for her safety. They believed she would one day change their fate. One year, a terrible drought struck the kingdom. The rivers dried into cracked earth. Crops turned to dust. Hunger spread like a silent plague. The people begged the king for help, but King Zorvan locked the royal grain stores, claiming they were for emergencies. "This is an emergency," Seraphina cried. "You will not chew." "Question me," the king roared. That night, unable to watch children starve, Seraphina did the unthinkable. She ordered the palace guards, who secretly respected her, to open the grain stores. Under the cover of darkness, carts of wheat and rice were sent to every village. By sunrise, bread baked in ovens across the land. When the king discovered this betrayal, his fury shook the palace walls. "You have humiliated me before my kingdom," he thundered. "I saved them," she replied calmly. Blinded by rage, the king made a cruel decision. "If you love the lowest creatures of this kingdom so much," he sneered, "then you shall marry the lowest creature among them." The royal court gasped. The next day, soldiers were ordered into the forest to capture a wild jackal that had often been seen near the palace grounds. It was a thin, golden-furred creature with piercing amber eyes. The king declared before the entire kingdom that Princess Seraphina would marry the jackal. People wept openly. Ministers protested. But no one dared defy the king. On the day of the wedding, Seraphina wore no heavy crown. Instead, she chose a simple white gown embroidered with tiny silver stars. She walked through the courtyard with dignity. The jackal, chained and frightened, stood before her. When she knelt beside him, the crowd fell silent. She gently removed his chain. "It is not your fault," she whispered to him. "You did not choose this any more than I did." The jackal looked into her eyes, and something unusual passed between them, something human. The ceremony was completed. With that, Seraphina was banished from the palace. No servants followed her. No carriage carried her. She walked alone into the forest, the jackal trotting beside her. The forest was thick and shadowed. Strange sounds echoed at night. They found shelter in a broken cottage covered in vines. It was cold and empty, but Seraphina did not complain. She gathered wood, started a small fire, and shared her food with the jackal. "You are my husband now," she said gently. "And I will treat you with respect." Days turned into weeks. Seraphina began helping nearby forest villagers who lived in poverty. She used herbs to heal the sick. She taught children how to read using old books she had carried from the palace. She planted seeds near their cottage, and slowly, vegetables began to grow. the jackal never left her side. If danger approached, he growled protectively. If she was tired, he rested near her feet. One evening, under a full silver moon, Seraphina heard a strange sound behind her. She turned, and gasped. Before her stood not a jackal, but a wounded young man. He had amber eyes, the same as the jackal. "Do not be afraid," he said weakly. She stepped back, heart racing. "I am Prince Aziel," he explained. "Once I ruled the neighboring kingdom of Lemuria. Your father envied our prosperity. When I refused to bow to him, he sought a dark sorcerer. I was cursed. Turned into a jackal until a princess of pure heart would marry me willingly and treat me with true compassion." Seraphina's breath trembled. You are him?" "Yes," he said. "And your kindness has begun breaking the curse." He explained that the curse allowed him to take human form only during the full moon, and only briefly. If she accepted him as her true husband, the curse would completely shatter. Seraphina looked into his eyes. She saw honesty, pain, gratitude. "I never saw you as a beast," she said softly. "I saw a soul." As she spoke, moonlight wrapped around them like silver silk. The forest glowed faintly. In that moment, the curse broke completely. Prince Aziel stood before her fully human, strong and noble. They embraced, not as victims of cruelty, but as survivors of injustice. Together, they rebuilt the forest village into a thriving community. Aziel taught farming techniques from his homeland. Seraphina organized fair trade. Wells were dug. Homes were built. Hope returned. Meanwhile, in the palace, King Zorvan noticed something unsettling. His kingdom grew weaker, while rumors spread of a flourishing settlement in the forest led by a kind princess and a mysterious prince. Jealousy and fear burned within him. He gathered soldiers and marched toward the forest, determined to destroy what he believed was rebellion. But when he arrived, he saw not rebellion, but prosperity. Fields of golden crops waved in the wind. Children laughed freely. People worked together happily. At the center stood Seraphina and Aziel, not dressed in jewels but in simple garments, guiding their people with fairness. The king felt something unfamiliar, shame. "You defied me again," he shouted, though his voice trembled. Seraphina stepped forward calmly. "I only chose kindness, father." Aziel stood beside her. "You tried to break her spirit," he said firmly, "but her goodness healed what you destroyed." The soldiers, who had suffered under Zorvan's harsh rule, looked at the joyful villagers. Doubt filled their eyes. For the first time in his life, King Zorvan saw the difference between ruling by fear and leading with love. His voice cracked. "Why do they love you, and fear me?" Seraphina's eyes softened. "Because love cannot be forced. It is earned." The king fell to his knees. His pride shattered. "I have ruled wrongly," he whispered. Tears fell from his eyes, real tears of regret. Seraphina embraced him gently. "Change begins with one step," she said. That day, King Zorvan ordered the prison gates opened. Taxes were lowered. Grain was distributed freely. He invited Aziel to help rebuild trade between kingdoms. Years passed. King Zorvan transformed from a feared tyrant into a humbled ruler guided by his daughter's wisdom. He learned to listen before commanding. Seraphina and Aziel eventually united both kingdoms, ruling with fairness and compassion. They built schools instead of dungeons. Gardens instead of battlefields. The story of the princess who married a jackal spread across lands and generations. Children grew up hearing that true nobility is not in crowns, but in character. That even the cruelest hearts can change. That kindness has the power to break curses stronger than magic. And whenever the full moon shone brightly in the night sky, Seraphina would smile softly, remembering the golden-eyed jackal who had once walked beside her in the darkness, and how love had turned exile into destiny. Thus, the fairy princess who married a jackal did not become a legend because of magic. She became a legend because she chose compassion when the world chose cruelty. And that choice changed everything.